Right now, a mainstream candidate for the US White House is warning everyone that they may be being set up for economic enslavement via central bank digital currency. But maybe more importantly, this might be a signal that for the first time, crypto is going to be an important issue in the US presidential election. If you feel like the CBDC prison in the thumbnail could never hold you in because there's no ceiling and no barbed wire at the top of the fence, or if you're finding value in these videos, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to be the most important candidate for crypto in the upcoming election. Will he make it past the primaries? I have no idea. Who knows? Who knows if he can make it past the primaries? I don't even know how media works these days. I don't know if mainstream media still holds as much sway over voters as it used to, or if now we are fully in the era of social media and podcasts and those kinds of things. Certainly things have been shifting, but I don't know the extent to which older generations are watching podcasts or paying attention to social media. Certainly a lot, but I don't know if they vote based on those things or if we still have a huge number of voters who are just paying attention to mainstream media. If they're all just paying attention to mainstream media, then an RFK Jr. might have a hard time. But if people are paying more attention to what I consider to be the real news, the real media, not the stuff happening on the super polarized mainstream media outlets, but the stuff happening in social media, real people talking about real things, then maybe there's a chance. But regardless of how far RFK Jr. makes in this election, he's going to make crypto an issue in this election. I think we've seen talk about crypto in the past. We've even had a recent president and prior to that presidential candidate who has been using crypto to raise money and things like that. But he's never fully embraced crypto. And then we've got the other mainstream candidate, the current president, who certainly does not like crypto. He is not an ally of crypto in any way. But enter RFK Jr. He might change all that because a lot of young voters and old voters, just people in general who embrace crypto, are going to see we've got some outside candidates who aren't necessarily the primary candidate for each of the two big parties who are embracing crypto. You could say the same thing about DeSantis, certainly. But RFK Jr. is saying some really big things about crypto. And let's face it, RFK Jr. also says some pretty crazy things. He says some pretty crazy things that polarize a lot of people. Maybe in the long term, they'll turn out to not be so crazy, but he definitely says some things that seem crazy to a lot of would-be voters. We'll see how true they all turn out to be. But right now, he is saying something that's going to sound kind of crazy. At least the way what he said is being depicted in the press is going to sound crazy to some people. Here's this article in Forbes. The article is called Biden rival RFK Jr. just issued a shock Bitcoin warning about a looming $9 trillion crypto price revolution. So that's not the headline you might have seen some other publications run with based on this article. But I do want to point out, even in an article that's just about RFK Jr., the first word in the article is Biden. This is a little problematic. They have to explain that RFK Jr., who's from one of the most storied, legendary political families in the history of the United States, is Biden rival. That's not exactly the way you want things to be going. Maybe that'll all change. We'll see. So the article points out some interesting things. And we'll build up to the really big thing here, though. RFK Jr., the Democratic U.S. presidential hopeful vying with Biden for the White House in next year's election, has positioned himself as a major Bitcoin supporter. True, RFK Jr.'s Bitcoin support comes as Bitcoin and crypto are increasingly featuring in the U.S. presidential race, alongside reports China could be gearing up for a crypto boom, with Republican candidate Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy both praising Bitcoin. I forgot about Vivek Ramaswamy. Apparently he is also pro-Bitcoin. Doesn't surprise me. I just wasn't aware of it. Of course, I am aware of Ron DeSantis's pro-Bitcoin stance. Now, after the world's biggest asset manager, BlackRock's chief executive Larry Fink suddenly flipped bullish on Bitcoin, RFK Jr. has warned that Wall Street's planned crypto revolution will trap everyone in slavery. That's the part that's going to seem crazy to people. But when you see his explanation, I think you could say it's sort of on the spectrum of, things that could conceivably happen. So if we come down here, let's see what he's talking about. I've talked about some kind of suspension of the capital gains taxes for conversion of Bitcoin, RFK Jr. said during a Spaces broadcast on X, which is formerly Twitter. I think we all know that, referring to his proposal to scrap the capital gains tax on Bitcoin sales, but with $1 million cap to prevent large investment managers from exploiting the exemption. Certainly, that is welcome news by all of us in crypto. I don't think any of us would be mad about a suspension of the capital gains taxes for conversion of crypto. Of course, over here in Cardano, we don't want it to just be about Bitcoin. And I don't think that's really what he would end up implying. I think he says Bitcoin because he knows the most voters are going to recognize the name Bitcoin. But I think what the form this would actually take would be for crypto. It wouldn't make any sense to suspend capital gains tax just for Bitcoin. I think this would take the form of all crypto. I mean, capital gains taxes are already a pretty good deal. If you're going to get taxed on your gains, it's great to get taxed at this reduced rate with long-term capital gains. Short-term capital gains, not so great. Long-term capital gains, great. So I don't know if this suspension would end up taking the form of a suspension only if you meet the long-term threshold, only if you've held long enough, or if it would be for all conversion. I don't know what those would be. I don't think he knows what it would be either. It would kind of depend on what he could get past, right? But all of it sounds good. And this is just one of his ideas around crypto. Here he explains that he doesn't want Goldman Sachs and BlackRock to be able to make use of this. So he has this $1 million cap. I think, some of us who have big dreams for our crypto holdings probably wish it was a little more than $1 million. I don't think it would kill us if it was like 2 or 3 million. That'd be fantastic because, hey, we can hope. We can hope that we get those kind of crazy, crazy gains. This is also interesting. He says RFK Jr., who has also promised to overhaul the U.S. financial system to back government debt treasury bills with Bitcoin and other commodities, went on to warn the recent flurry of applications to launch a U.S. spot Bitcoin exchange traded fund led by BlackRock will undermine attempts to free people from financial control. Now we're going to go back into what's going to seem crazy to some people. From financial control and lead to the adoption of a U.S. central bank digital currency, sometimes called a digital dollar. So here's where he's going to say the really crazy thing that might freak some people out. They're funneling people into these ETFs, RFK Jr. said. As soon as they create a central bank digital currency, BlackRock will transform those ETFs from Bitcoin into CBDCs and trap us all in that kind of slavery. One of the greatest things about RFK Jr. is that he can say the very crazy stuff. This is a very noteworthy little soundbite. He's very good at producing these. He's produced a lot of these. Sometimes people go crazy in a negative way. I think some of the vaccine stuff may have had that effect on some very mainstream people. But this is the kind of soundbite that is going to get some attention. So what are the chances of this actually happening? Would BlackRock get everybody into some kind of a Bitcoin ETF and then suddenly figure out how to transform that Bitcoin ETF into a central bank digital currency ETF? Well, you could certainly imagine BlackRock, developing this BTC ETF. A lot of people jumping into that. And then BlackRock suddenly, changing stances and saying, hey, Bitcoin's too volatile. You can see people, them going through this next bull cycle and, a lot of people adopting their Bitcoin ETF. And then they get to the top of the cycle. You could imagine BlackRock turning around and saying, you know what? Bitcoin's too volatile. We're going to turn this into a CBDC ETF, or somehow they deprecate this Bitcoin ETF and they create a new CBDC ETF that they're going to push. You could see this kind of a shift happening, and maybe it would just be their way of trying to transition out of crypto at the top and into something that in dollar terms is more stable, a CBDC. You could imagine something like this happening, whether it's part of some nefarious plan to, quote, trap us all in slavery, or whether it's just organically what an entity like BlackRock would do because they're trying to realize the most possible profits. Whether it's any of those, you could actually imagine this happening. And you could also imagine it having the practical effect that RFK Jr. is implying here. He's implying that everybody rushes into these ETFs, and then they, somehow, whether nefariously or not nefariously, they get transformed into CBDC ETFs, CBDC funds of some type, and all of a sudden, everybody who was previously seeing these, seeing a certain result from these crypto-based ETFs, all of a sudden they all end up in these CBDC instruments. This could practically have the effect that RFK Jr. is talking about. So even though it sounds like a super crazy soundbite, maybe this is something that's within the realm of possibilities. You might have missed these Masari numbers from last Friday on Cardano. Very impressive indeed. Tim Harrison reports, fresh today, the Q2 Cardano report from Masari. Key insights from report: average daily dApp transactions were up 49% quarter on quarter. Think about that. Daily dApp transactions were up quarter on quarter 49%. TVL was up 198.6% year to date. And in 2023, Cardano moved from 34th place to 21st place in TVL rankings across all chains. You realize if we do that again, that time we moved down 13 spots. If we move down another 13 spots, we're in the top 10. This is fantastic progress for Cardano on the DeFi front. Of course, it's not all DeFi. We also have locking and other types of projects now too. But on to our next news. The IOG education team has recently delivered the first in a series of webinars in collaboration with the prestigious Milken Institute and their alumni. The Milken Institute is an economic think tank with offices in Santa Monica, Washington, D.C., Miami, Singapore, and New York, if I remember their Wikipedia entry correctly. But this is a pretty good move, I think, by IOG, because think tanks, as the name would imply, are where a lot of ideas and trends in sort of thinking, especially like in economic thinking, a lot of trends are born in think tanks. Good move, IOG. Finally, here is another rumor around Worldcoin. So I don't know if this is true or not, but here's the rumor. Last week, Worldcoin had 10 plus locations in India where people could get their iris scan and get verified to receive 25 Worldcoins. But as of now, only Bangalore is listed. What happened? Rumor is that crypto literate folks were bringing hundreds of naive people to Orbs to receive the 25 Worldcoin airdrop. These middlemen would give 10 to 20 USD to the person getting scanned, transfer the airdropped Worldcoin to their wallets, and sell it on Binance for approximately 50 USD. So it looks like the unflattering rumors around this project just continue swirling. We'll see what happens to this Worldcoin in the end. There was definitely a lot of media hype around it at its launch recently, but all the news reporting I'm seeing, at least out of the crypto world, seems to be very unflattering. So we'll see what becomes of this project. I hope you're having a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.